The 30th candle on the little cake had already burned down a quarter inch by the time I stopped pretending to read the wine list. I'd memorized it anyway. Fenwick's keeps the reds on the second page, and I'd been staring at the second page for close to 40 minutes. Long enough that the words had gone soft and meaningless. Long enough that the waiter had stopped topping off my water because he understood, before I did, that no one else was coming. "Would you like me to hold the kitchen a little longer, ma'am?" He said it kindly. That was almost the worst part. He glanced at the 4 empty chairs, then at the cake with its single lit candle I'd asked them to light early because I couldn't stand looking at an unlit one, and then back at me with the particular gentleness people reserve for the recently dumped and the freshly bereaved. 10 more minutes, I said. They're probably stuck on the bridge. We both knew the bridges were fine. It was a Tuesday in April in Portland, clear enough to see Mount Hood turning pink over the rooftops, and there was no traffic to blame, no storm, no reason, except the reason that had run underneath my whole life like a pipe I'd learned to stop noticing. I'd booked the table 3 weeks earlier. I remember I did it the same afternoon I signed the term sheet for our seed round, $900,000, the first real outside money anyone had ever put behind loam and ash. The ceramics company I'd built out of a rented kiln and a folding table and a stubbornness I inherited from no one I could name. Hearthline, a national home retailer, had just agreed to carry our dinnerware in 90 stores. For about an hour that day I'd felt like a person things happened for, instead of a person things happened around, and in that hour I texted the family group thread. "Dinner at Fenwick's, my birthday, and I've got big news. Friday the 11th, 7 p.m., I'll get the reservation." My mother's red receipt turned on at 7:14 the next morning. No reply. 2 days later I sent a second one, lighter, breezier, the way you soften your voice when you're asking for something you shouldn't have to ask for. "Just confirming Friday, would love to see you all." Nothing. The night before at 11 I sent the last one, and I hate that I can still recite it. "Tables booked for 4 at 7. I really hope you'll come." Then I put my phone face down and slept badly and told myself I was being dramatic. Now the candle wax pooled and I sipped a Syrah I couldn't taste, and I did the math I always did. When I was 15 and my brother was 12, my father drove him to Nashville for a week of studio time because my brother had written 3 chords and called it a demo. My middle school honors recital was that same week. My father said, and I remember the exact shape of his mouth when he said it, "He's got something special, sweetheart. You've got sense. Sense doesn't need chaperoning." I've never in my life been so thoroughly complimented and abandoned in one breath. That sense is what co-signed a $22,000 loan for my brother's touring van when I was 23 and still eating cereal for dinner. When he stopped making payments 5 months in, the band had creative differences, which is what my family called quitting. I covered it so my credit wouldn't crater before I could get a business loan of my own. My father thanked me by asking if I could also chip in for the trailer. Here's the thing I need to say, because I've watched people hear this story and ask, exasperated, why I kept doing it. I kept doing it because I believed there was a version of me good enough, useful enough, quiet enough, that they would finally turn around and see me the way they saw him. I thought love was a door with a combination, and if I just tried enough numbers I'd get in. I was wrong about the door. There was no door. There was a wall with a mural of a door painted on it, and I'd been knocking on drywall for 30 years. "Excuse me. I don't mean to intrude." I looked up expecting the waiter and found a man instead. 60 maybe, with the kind of face that had done a lot of squinting into weather. Deep lines, gray beard trimmed close, reading glasses pushed up into silver hair. He had a canvas camera bag slung across his chest, worn pale at the corners. I've been sitting at the counter and I couldn't help noticing. He nodded at the cake. "It seems like it might be your birthday, and it seems like it might not be going the way birthdays should." I should have said something polite and closed. Instead I heard myself say, "That obvious? You've checked your phone 22 times. I'm a photographer. I count things without meaning to." A small apologetic smile. "May I wish you a happy birthday at least? I won't take a chair unless you want one taken." There was no pity in it, which is why I said, "You can take a chair." His name was August. He photographed people for a living. Not weddings, not products, but what he called the year after. The people who had come through something, and were figuring out who they were on the far side of it. He'd published a couple of books of it. He ordered a coffee and asked what I did, and for reasons I still can't fully explain, I told him the truth instead of the small version. "I make dishes," I said. "Real ones. Plates, bowls, mugs, the stuff you actually eat off of. My company's called Loam and Ash. We just closed our first funding, and we're going into 90 stores this fall." I turned my phone around and showed him the matte glazed cereal bowl that had started it all, the one I'd thrown 100 times before it stopped fighting me. "I invited my family here to celebrate, and they're running late. They're not coming." Saying it out loud made it real in a way the empty chairs hadn't. They didn't answer a single message. August didn't rush to fix it. He just looked at the bowl on the screens for a while, then at me. Whoever taught you to make something that plain and that good, he said, did you a favor? Even if they never meant to. Plain and good is the hardest thing there is. I don't know why that undid me a little, but it did. The waiter came and lit the rest of the candles without being asked, and August said, go on. Make it count. I closed my eyes, and the wish I made was not the one I'd carried in with me. I didn't wish they'd walk through the door, I wished I'd stop watching the door. We stayed until the restaurant started stacking chairs. I told him about the van, about the recitals, about a childhood spent being the reliable one so my brother could be the interesting one. When I finally said the part that embarrassed me, that some stubborn corner of my heart still loved them, August didn't tell me I was foolish. Love and a locked gate can live on the same property, he said. You're allowed to love people from the yard. I paid for both of us. He protested, and I told him it was the best birthday money I'd ever spent, and I meant it. We traded numbers. I drove home through the wet, shining streets feeling, for the first time in longer than I could measure, like someone had actually seen the whole of me and not looked away. It was enough. It was weirdly more than enough. 3 years is a strange amount of time. Long enough to change everything, short enough that the people who miss the change assume it didn't happen. By that third spring, Loam and Ash was valued at $38 million. Our dinnerware was in a Nora Ephron reboot and on the cover of a design magazine, and, that particular week, in a Forbes feature about founders who'd built physical product companies without burning venture money like kindling. I read the piece on my studio's loading dock, sitting on a pallet of unfired greenware drinking coffee gone lukewarm, and I felt the old reflex, the urge to send it to the family thread, to hold it up and say, look what I did. I didn't. August had taught me that the urge to show them was just the old knocking, and that I could feel it without answering it. My mother called me the same afternoon the Forbes link went live. I know because the timing was that clean. Sweetheart. Her voice had the syrup in it, the tone she used to save for church people and creditors. We saw the article. We're so proud. Everyone saying it. Thank you. I stood at the window of my studio office, watching my glazed team stack the days firing. It's been a good stretch. Listen, honey, your brother's getting married. Corinne, you'll adore her, she's got such taste. June wedding. And your father and I were talking, we think this is the perfect moment for a little family project. Your brand is doing so beautifully, and family should share in family success, shouldn't it? We were thinking a collaboration, the family name on a line, something that ties us all together. I let the word collaboration sit in the air like a soap bubble. What does that mean, exactly? Well, a rustle, the sound of her covering the phone to say something to my father. Your brother's got the album finally coming together, and a tour, and touring's expensive these days. A sponsorship from the company would be such a natural fit. And of course the wedding. Corinne's family is wonderful, but they're not exactly in a position, and you're doing so well now. There it was. Not a birthday. Not a phone call in 3 years except 2 Christmas texts and 1 aunt's funeral. Not a single question in all that time about what I actually made. I once heard my mother tell a neighbor I sold coffee cups, which is technically true the way a cathedral is technically a building. But now there was money on the table, and suddenly I was family. Let me think about it, I said, my voice sliding into the flat professional register I use with vendors who've missed a deadline. Of course. Call me back tonight? I didn't call back that night. Instead, I opened a spreadsheet and titled it, without any drama, what I paid. Line by line, I wrote it out. The van, the covered payments, the trailer. The 2 months of my brother's rent I'd handled after the band broke up the first time. The plane ticket I'd bought my father when his truck died and he needed to get to my brother's showcase in Austin. A showcase I wasn't invited to. The security deposit on the apartment my parents co-signed for my brother, and then quietly stuck me with when he skipped town. When I finished, the total was $51,000, and every cent of it had flowed one direction, downhill, away from me, toward a person the whole family agreed was the special one. I want to be honest about what I felt looking at that number, because a lot of people expect it to be rage. It wasn't rage. It was something quieter and colder and more useful. It was clarity. $51,000, and not one birthday. I forwarded the spreadsheet to no one. I just needed to see it in a column to know I hadn't imagined the shape of my own life. That week my brother texted too. Hey sis, huge news about the wedding, you're gonna love Corinne. Also the tour needs a title sponsor, thinking your company's a perfect fit, like $250K for the run, incredible exposure for you. LMK. I read it standing in the freight elevator, and I laughed out loud, alone, the metal walls throwing it back at me. $250,000. Exposure for me. As if a tour bus with my logo on it would do for my brand what my brand was already doing for itself in 90 stores. I told my CFO, a steady woman named Colette who'd left a much bigger company to come run our numbers. that if anyone in my family contacted the company about sponsorships or partnerships or opportunities, it came to me first, and the answer was already no. She nodded and said the only smart thing, which was, "You have zero obligation to braid family into this cap table, legally or otherwise." I knew that. It still helped to hear it from someone who read balance sheets for a living. That night I wrote my mother back, not an accusation. Not the spreadsheet, I kept that for myself. Just a clean forward-facing paragraph. I said I loved them. I said I was happy for my brother. I said the company was not a family resource and would never be one, that I wasn't in a position to sponsor a tour or fund a wedding, and that if they wanted a relationship with me, it would have to be a relationship, not an invoice. I read it 4 times. My finger hovered. And then I remembered 30 candles burning down in an empty restaurant while their read receipts blinked on and off, and I hit send. Her reply came in under 10 minutes. "After everything we've sacrificed for you, this is who you've become. We raised you better than this." Cold, ungrateful. "I hope your success keeps you warm." I sat with that for a while. Then I typed the only response I've ever been fully proud of, and I've thought about the wording so many times since that I could carve it into a plate. "When you can name 5 things you did for me that weren't just the basic job of keeping a child alive, I'll listen. Until then, I'm not paying a bill I never agreed to. I'm not being cruel. I'm just done pretending the ledger runs the other way." I sent it and I turned my phone face down, and I noticed my hands weren't shaking, and that felt like a small private miracle. A week later, they came to the office. I was mid-meeting, 6 people around the table, quarterly numbers up on the screen, my head of design walking us through the new stoneware, when Colette knocked and leaned in and said, "Lo, your mother and brother are in the lobby. They brought a cake. They say it's urgent." Somebody's pen stopped. I felt the whole room want to be somewhere else. "Give me 10 minutes, everyone," I said. And I set down the clicker with a calm I did not entirely feel, and I walked out to the lobby of the company they'd never once visited when it was 3 of us in a leaking warehouse with a space heater and a prayer. My mother stood in the middle of our showroom holding a white bakery box with both hands, the way you'd hold a baby you weren't sure of. Her hair was freshly done, that expensive auburn. My brother had his hands in the pockets of jeans that cost more than a kiln, and he was doing that slow appraising turn people do in a place they're pricing. "There she is," my mother sang, lifting the box. "We came to celebrate the Forbes thing, no hard feelings about the phone calls. Family sticks together." Behind her, our receptionist was suddenly very interested in her monitor. 2 people from the glaze studio had drifted to the doorway of the break room. My brother tapped the glass of a display case holding a set of our teacups. "You're really cleaning up off these little things, huh?" he said, and I watched him do the mental math on my life the way I'd once done it on his van. "Let's talk in the conference room," I said. My mother trailed her fingers along the reclaimed wood table as we walked past the sample library. "This must have cost a fortune," she murmured, not quite quietly. I shut the glass door. "Why are you actually here?" She set the cake down between us like a treaty. "Can't a mother be proud of her daughter? You can. You haven't been to this building once in 6 years. The last 2 times you called me, it was for $250,000 and a wedding you want me to bankroll." I kept my voice level, which took everything I had. "So forgive me if the cake feels like a receipt." My brother dropped into a chair and spread his hands, all's easy charm. "Come on. We're family. That's supposed to mean something." "It does," I said, and I meant it, and that's what made the next part hard. Family is supposed to mean love without an itemized bill. Support with no expected return. Showing up when there's nothing in it for you. When I needed a cosigner for my first equipment loan, Dad said it was too much risk. When I worked 18-hour days for 3 years in a building with no heat, not one of you came by. When I turned 30 and sat alone at Fenwick's, every one of your phones apparently died at the same time. You didn't want to know me until a magazine told you I was worth knowing. My mother's mouth pressed thin. "You've gotten so hard. I've gotten honest. There's a difference, and I'm sorry you can't feel it yet." I looked at my brother. "I'm not sponsoring the tour. I'm not funding the wedding. I'll come to the wedding if I'm actually welcome as your sister and not as a checkbook, and I'll bring a real gift. But the company isn't a family bank. My success doesn't put me in your debt, it never will." She stood, gathering her purse to her chest like armor. "Well, I can see we've caught you at a bad time. Any time you show up expecting a withdrawal is a bad time," I said. "Show up expecting nothing and you'll always be welcome." They left with stiff backs and colder goodbyes, and through the glass I watched them cross the lobby and get in the elevator. My mother rigid, my brother jabbing the button twice. When the doors closed, I exhaled so completely I felt lightheaded. Colette appeared at my elbow with a glass of water and the good sense to say nothing. I thought that was the end of it. It was barely the middle. That night my brother posted to every platform he had. Some people forget where they came from the second there's money in it. Blood's supposed to be thicker than a bank account. He didn't name me, he didn't have to. Within an hour, cousins I hadn't spoken to since I was a teenager were tagging me, half of them concerned, half of them enjoying it. My mother's church friends started a prayer chain for their troubled daughter who'd lost her way. My best friend Marisol, the one person from my old life who'd stuck, called to tell me my father had been working the phones at his Rotary breakfast, telling anyone who'd listen that they'd backed my little business from day one and that success had gone to my head. 22 investors believed in you before your family knew what a kiln was, Marisol said, flat with disgust. I was there. I helped you sand shelves. I know, I said. It's fine. It's not fine, but you're handling it like it is, which is somehow more satisfying to watch. I would have let it stay a family embarrassment, I would have. What I couldn't let stand was what came next. My assistant flagged it on a Thursday. Mr. Delacroix's office called, she said, meaning our lead investor, the managing partner at Northlight who'd written the biggest check in our round. His EA said your brother reached out to him directly. Something about, she used the word instability, family's issues affecting the company. He wanted Mr. Delacroix to be aware, in case it impacted the investment. I felt the heat climb my neck. My brother had gotten Mr. Delacroix's contact, probably scraped it off a conference bio, and cold emailed my lead investor to plant doubt about my company because I wouldn't hand him $250,000. That wasn't a family fight anymore. That was someone reaching into the one thing I'd built with my own 2 hands and trying to crack it, out of spite, to punch me for saying no. Get me lunch with Mr. Delacroix, I said, this week, and call our attorney. I met Mr. Delacroix 2 days later at, of all places, Fenwick's, the same restaurant 3 years on, and the irony sat down at the table before either of us did. He was a compact, precise man in his 60s who chose his words like he was spending them. I appreciate you making time, I started. I understand my brother contacted you. He unfolded his napkin with great care. He did. He suggested there were family circumstances that might destabilize the company. He seemed to feel he was owed something by your success. A pause. I've been doing this for 30 years. Do you know what I've learned to watch for? Tell me. The people who show up wanting to warn you about someone. 9 times out of 10, the person they're warning you about is the healthiest one in the room. He put on his reading glasses and looked at me over them. Your last quarter was up 31%. Your margins are the best in the category. Your team stays. Numbers don't have families, they just tell the truth. He picked up the menu. There's no instability I can see, except in whoever sent that email. Now. I'm told the halibut is very good. The knot I'd carried in my chest for a week loosened by half. We ordered. We talked shop. And I understood something clean and permanent. The professionalism I'd built over 3 grinding years was a fortress my brother couldn't email his way into. But I wasn't going to just absorb it either. The comment section of my own conscience had been shouting at me for days, and I finally listened. When I got back to the office, our attorney sent my brother a formal cease and desist. Not a lawsuit, not a scene, just a crisp letter noting that publicly implying my company was financially unstable, in writing to an investor, was defamation with real commercial consequences, and that any further such statements would be answered in court. It cost me 1 phone call and 1 afternoon. I should have done it a week earlier. Boundaries, I was learning, are sometimes just a legal document with your dignity behind it. What I did after that surprised even me. I made 2 quiet moves and told no one. I set up a small fund, the Kiln Fund I called it later, to give first-year grants to women starting hands-on craft businesses, the exact kind of thing not one person had ever offered me. And I made an anonymous donation, $25,000, to a nonprofit that puts instruments and music teachers into underfunded schools. No press release, no tagging. My brother would never know. I did it partly because it was a good cause, and partly, I'll admit, because there was a poetry to it. I could put more real money into music in a single afternoon and mean it than he'd ever begged me for over a bus. My father's texts started coming after the cease and desist landed. Different tactics now. Your mother can't sleep. Then, a few days later, my blood pressure's been up, the doctor's concerned. This stress isn't helping anyone. Then a padded envelope arrived by courier, a photo album, our family Christmases, sticky notes flagging the good years. Remember this? We were happy. I sat with that album on my kitchen counter for a long time, and August came over with takeout and found me there. You look like a woman doing archaeology, he said. They sent me evidence. I turned the album so he could see. Proof that we were once a real family, so I'll feel like a monster for wanting a real family now. He didn't tell me what to feel. He just asked, what would a relationship with them actually look like if you got to design it from scratch? No one had ever asked me that. My whole life it had been all or nothing, give them everything or lose them entirely. I'd never once considered a middle. So I said it slowly, feeling it out. Scheduled calls. 30 minutes. Public places when we meet, no drop-ins, no money ever in either direction. And the second anyone treats me like an ATM, the call ends and we try again next month. That's not a wall, August said. That's a fence with a gate you hold the key to. People keep telling me boundaries aren't walls, I said, half a laugh. I'm starting to believe them. Boundaries aren't about keeping people out, he said. They're about not disappearing yourself to keep the peace. You can love someone and still not let them live in your chest rent-free. I want to be clear, because I've watched people online argue this to death. I wasn't building a wall out of hate. I didn't hate them. Some part of me still ached for the mother who'd braided my hair before I understood I was the spare. Setting a boundary isn't the same as cutting people off, and it isn't the same as punishing them. It's the difference between slamming a door and installing one. A door I could open, on days I chose, to people who behaved like guests instead of collectors. I went to the wedding. I sent my brother an email first, laying out the terms plainly. I'd come, I'd be gracious, I'd stay about 2.5 hours, and there would be no business conversations, not one. I'd bring a gift. I'd already picked it, a full set of our best dinnerware and a modest but genuine check, the card reading simply, for a home built on respect. He wrote back a single word: deal. The wedding was at a restored lodge up in the gorge, string lights and river light. Corinne floating around in ivory looking genuinely lovely and genuinely unaware of half of what she'd married into. My brother found me during cocktails, August at my side in a gray suit. You came, my brother said like he'd bet against it. I said I would. I introduced August as my partner because by then that's what he was and I was done being vague about it. Congratulations. Corinne seems wonderful. She is. He shifted. Listen, about the tour. August's hand found the small of my back, just a touch, our agreed upon signal. Not today, I said, easy and final. Today's about you and Corinne's, let's keep it there. His jaw worked, and then, to my surprise, he nodded. Yeah, okay, fair. He looked at August. How'd you two meet? Over birthday candles, August said smoothly, and I loved him a little more for saving me the explanation. My mother caught me near the dessert table 20 minutes later. Pale blue, a cloud of gardenia perfume, a smile that dimmed the second we were out of earshot of the crowd. Your father and I were hurt by your email, she said. Setting conditions to attend your own brother's wedding. It felt cold. I needed us both to know the rules going in, I said. That's not cold, that's clear, we're family. Family doesn't need rules. Family that's hurt each other for 30 years needs the most rules of all, I said gently. I love you. I've also learned to love myself, and those two things are finally allowed to sit at the same table. Something moved across her face, not softening exactly, but the first flicker of understanding that her old keys no longer fit the lock. Your father and I won't be here forever, you know. I know, I said. And when you truly need me, a hospital, a real emergency, I will be there in an instant. But needing me and being entitled to me aren't the same thing, and I'm not going to keep confusing them for you. I checked my watch. We've been here almost 2.5 hours. We should go, early start tomorrow. She opened her mouth to push the way she always had, and then, for the first time in my entire life, she closed it. Will you call Sunday? She asked, and her voice had gone smaller. Sunday afternoon, I said. 30 minutes, like we agreed. On the way out, I caught my brother's eye across the dance floor. He lifted his glass an inch. Not warmth, not quite, but something like respect, or maybe just surrender. I lifted mine back. It was more than we'd managed in years. A year after that, my kitchen was full. I turned 33 with candles again, but these were on a cake in my own home, and the people around the island counter were all there because they wanted to be. Marisol, who'd sanded shelves with me. Colette and her wife. 2 of my glaze artists. August, his shoulder against mine, adjusting his glasses the way he does when he's about to say something he's been saving. Make it count, he said. Same as the first night, and I closed my eyes and found that for once I couldn't think of a single thing to wish for. The company had crossed 38 million and kept going. The book we'd made together, his photographs of women who'd built things with their hands, my words beside them, sat on my coffee table with its spine already cracked from being opened. And the old ache, the one I'd carried into Fenwick's 3 years and a lifetime ago, had faded to something I could touch without bleeding. My relationship with my family settled into the fenced shape I'd designed. Sunday calls, mostly pleasant, occasionally not, always 30 minutes. My mother asks about the company now without telling me how to run it. My father has stopped narrating his blood pressure at me. My brother sends the occasional text, and once, unprompted, he sent a photo of Corinne holding one of our bowls in their new kitchen. No caption, no ask, just a picture. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't an apology. But it wasn't a bill either, and after a lifetime of bills that felt like weather changing. I blew out the candles in one breath, and everyone cheered, and later, when the party thinned, my doorbell rang. A young woman stood on the step, maybe 24, clutching a notebook to her chest like a life raft. Noor, a ceramicist I'd given one of the first kiln fund grants to. I'm so sorry to crash, she said. My dad wants me to come work in the family hardware store, and he keeps saying he sacrificed everything for me. And I feel like I owe him my whole life. and I don't know how to want something different without being a terrible daughter. I brought her inside and poured her a coffee, and I heard my own 30-year-old self in every word. Obligation and love use the same alphabet, I told her, but they spell completely different words. One of them empties you out, the other one fills you up. Your father's dream isn't a debt you have to pay just because he dreamed it near you. She wrote that down, and I watched her do it, and I understood, finally, all the way to the bone, how far I'd walked. August found us there and quietly set a fresh candle on the last slice of cake. He lit it, and Noor and I blew it out together, laughing, and the little flame gave up its light without a fight. Someone asked me once, at a talk I gave last winter, whether I wished my family had shown up that night I turned 30. The room went quiet, waiting for the bitter answer or the forgiving one. No, I said, and I meant it completely. Because if they'd come, I'd have spent another decade knocking on a painted door. Instead, I got a stranger who lit my candles when the people who were supposed to couldn't, and I got a life I actually chose. I looked out at all those faces. The loneliest birthday of my life turned out to be the first honest one. Sometimes the room emptying is just the universe making space for the people who'll stay. The candles I light now don't burn alone. And when I catch myself, some old reflex, wanting to hold my life up to people who were only ever going to grade it, I let the urge rise and pass, and I go back to the ones already in the room, the ones who came for me, not for the smoke.